I'm super excited to chat today. I love when people in our lives connect us with other people that are just like super aligned. And I kind of think of you as this like local hometown like hero that everyone is connected with and wants to be like in your world and a part of. And we're going to unpack like how that's shown up for you personally and professionally and having those networking skills. But I think it is just so fun when we can like let our professions and our energy light and lead, and you do that so well. So I'm super excited to have you here today.
Thank
As
you.
we jump in, I want to just kind of like start with that. Would you consider yourself like a community leader always, or have you kind of developed into this role of helping people in the community share their stories, navigate their businesses? Where did it really all begin? Take us back to the beginning.
It's interesting when I think back, everyone always says you start when you're a kid, right? Like when I
Yeah.
grew up, I wasn't like, this is what I wanted to be when I grew up. I actually wanted to be a teacher. But it probably started back when I got into hospitality. I worked at a restaurant. I was a hostess. So that kind of like got me out of my shell and to be more outgoing. I definitely have like, my dad. Like if anyone meets my dad, you'll be like, oh, that's where she gets her personality from. We're both very outgoing and talkative. So, but I never really thought much about it. And then as my career kind of advanced and I went into events and sales, I really started finding that people were like buying or wanting to work with me because we connected. Like we had a personal
Yeah.
connection. Like I think back to when I worked at a hotel, I'm still feel so connected to those clients. Some of them are like my brides that I got married, that got married and we follow on Facebook. And I have clients who still kind of like wind up in my world, whether it's at a new job or just out on the street. So I think it was probably then that where I was like, okay, I guess I'm kind of good at this. But
Yeah.
I'm genuine. Like you meet me, I'm not flaking it. I'm not a salesperson that, is trying to, get the sale. I really truly care about every single person I interact with. And so as that kind of evolved after I left the hotel business, I went and worked at a local rental company called Encore Event Rentals. And I think that's where it really started. Like we're really like blossomed.
Yeah.
And I started as like sales and marketing, and then I kind of evolved this position as business development manager. And so I was basically what people would say the face of the company. So yes, there is an owner, and then there's a whole team behind it. But I was the one that was out there. I was networking. I was meeting with clients, meeting with venues, and just really like out there. And we took that company from a little tiny little baby company to this massive company that it is today. And of course, like I always give credit to it's a team, but I really think like building those relationships in any business is so important. And so I think that's kind of where it started. And then
Yeah.
as you're in it in this like community, and I was on a board and I was the president of the board, and so I was doing a lot more networking events. People just kind of like suck into your world and you just meet people and you just like create this like buzz. And so I like live for it. People are so everyone's like, no one likes to go to a networking event. I do. I'm like, who can I meet today? Who can you be connected with? And so I found at that point like this is really what I enjoy. And so yeah, that's kind of I think where. Oh, and then as I was doing business development, one of my goals was to do more like nonprofit, like get on a board or be part of just not just the event industry, but in inside of our community. And there was a leadership program that the chamber runs called it's called LSR Leadership Santa Rosa, and I was part of that back in the pandemic around 19 to 20, or 2019 to 20, and just like learning about our community and all the amazing things that we have going on here. It just like was this. I just wanted to I wanted to know more. I wanted to do more. I wanted more meet more people. So I think that's where like that has evolved from too.
Oh, I love that. So much to unpack there. And I think so many people can relate to so many different parts of your story. A couple of the things that I think are really good call outs is once you got involved into the group, you saw what was available in your current city. My husband and our family, we went and lived in an Airbnb last year for 5 months. And part of that was figuring out like do we for sure want to stay where we're at? And we were pretty sure we did, but I had a bunch of events going on. We didn't want to have to leave the kids every month. And we're like, and let's see like how we feel being gone for a couple months. And what we noticed is that where we went was Phoenix, Scottsdale has way more going on than where we live. And so we, at first, were like, gosh, there's so much to do for the kids here. There's so much fun stuff. But what we did notice when we came back and we really thought about it is we weren't even taking advantage of what already was in our town. Like,
Mm-hmm.
sure, there was more there, but we weren't appreciating what we even had where we were. And I think that that is so important. So I love that you're saying, like, I got involved and I was like, what are we doing here? What are the things that we have going on? Because it's so easy to, like, go to your local grocery store and be like, there's nothing to do in this town, or there's nothing to do here. We're not doing anything. What's this town doing? But it's like you're just not in the right rooms having the right conversations to know like what people are doing. So I think that's really cool and a good reminder for all of us. The other thing you remind me of is you said people are like, I hate networking. And I remember but I was in my last job and I took this it was called 16 personalities quiz, and it was like a mini version of Myers-Briggs. And it came out and it was like, one of your skill sets is like networking. And at that time I was in all these networking events for work, and I was like, oh my gosh, I hate these, like I hate going to this. But what I realized later is it's not always the networking as a whole, it's what you're networking about.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed that as you've been able to like do more networking and you help other people learn how to do this, right? This is a skill set that you can like teach and help people cultivate their businesses, their brands, their personal confidence and networking. So have you seen that shown up for yourself or others where it's like, it's not that you hate marketing or networking. It's not that you hate getting into these different rooms and connecting with people. You just don't like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
How do we talk about something different?
That's interesting you bring that up. I'm actually speaking next month for I still have my hand in the events industry. My husband and I have our an event setup labor company. So I am definitely still involved in the industry, and plus some of my clients are in the industry. But I'm speaking on that. And as I'm kind of like noodling around what I'm going to talk about, I think at the end of the day, what a lot of people think about networking is like you think you have to go out there to sell. Like you're going out there to sell your product, or you sell your business, or you sell your service. But that's not what it's about. And I think that people need to get out of their head and think about it more as selling yourself and like selling you as a brand, because I think you can work somewhere and you can sell that, but it's the reason why you got them there is because of you. And
Mm-hmm.
so I really want people to think of it that way and not just like selling themselves. And you have these conversations and you don't want to be like, this is what I do and this is why you should, buy from me and blah, 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 blah. Like, no. Do you have kids? What do you like to do? Like really getting to know people. And I think if you go in it in that approach, then it's a little bit more easier. But I've met so many amazing people, so many amazing people. And to be honest, there's some days where I don't want to go. I'm like, oh, it's just so exhausted. I've had a long day and I just don't want to like be on. And it's those nights or those events where I walk away and I'm like, dang, if I didn't go, I wouldn't have met that person. Or, oh,
Yeah.
like it's crazy how the world works, but I've met so many great people and so many connections through that. So
And permission to be human and like not want to do it all the time, but still show
yeah.
up anyways.
Yeah.
I love that. Now, you were talking about just like your genuine heart, right? And that it's not about sales. It's about like genuinely wanting to get to know people and having this curiosity streak is really what I think it is, about learning about someone's life, business, whatever it is. But when we're like kind-hearted people, there's this other part of that where we have to sometimes like let go of attachment, where it's not about you. If it's not, you're not able to help that person in their business, or you're just not able to have a good conversation, you're not able to have that connection, you have to just kind of, I have a friend that says bless and release.
Mm-hmm.
How have you seen that show up if you're in situations where I think sometimes people can go into a situation and they get so caught up on the end result? If the end result could be like how many business cards I got, or how many people I met, it could be making a sale, it could be finding a best friend at the mom meetup, whatever it is. If it doesn't go to plan or it's just not working out, how have you, through all your networking, connecting, stayed in a role to like come back to you even when maybe a relationship's just not meant to be?
Not every relationship is not meant to be. And like we were talking, that not every client is for you either. And
Yeah.
so I think that one of my words this year is intentional. And I want to be intentional about my time and who I give my time to. You know, I have 4 kids and a husband and my podcast, and like I am stretched really thin. But I really think it's about being intentional about your time and who you give it to. And if you're not connecting with somebody and it just doesn't feel right and you walk away and you just don't feel good, like no one has time for that. So you kind of have to, I believe though that you always should be kind and still like nice to people and still stay connected, whether that's like, you know, oh, here's my business card or here's LinkedIn or whatever, because you never know where they might show up again, and you never know when they
Mhm.
might be a potential client, or they're, you know, your paths might cross. So I believe in you just being kind, but it's okay to like to not want to be around somebody or like have someone in your life or give that time. If, you know, somebody keeps asking you to hang out and you don't want to be hang out with them, don't hang out with them, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that people, they feel obligated, but at the end of the day, not everyone is for everybody.
Yeah. I love that. And so, how did you get started in a podcast? Because I think this is, I'm going to like totally shift gears because I'm thinking about this and I'm just thinking about, I remember being in a similar industry, a similar space to you. And I didn't not love it. Like, there were things that I absolutely love about that industry, but it wasn't like, I wasn't meant to be there forever. I wasn't meant to have that be my thing. And you can like something and want more and have another part of you. And so your podcast, was that really the first way you kind of broke out of the industry and stepped into like different conversations, different ways, or was there something first?
There's kind of two parts. So I think the first part of how I got to where I am today is, yes, my job was fulfilling and I, you know, I loved what I did and I loved my clients and I loved all that. But I actually read a book, and you probably have read it, is Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis.
I
And
actually haven't read it, but I have heard amazing things about all of Rachel Hollis's books. So everyone should read it, but it just like hasn't been what I've prioritized.
yeah.
But I love the
Well, and I
book.
never read either. Like that wasn't a thing for me either. But someone's like, you should just read it. And I'm like, I'm going to read it. Literally, that book changed my life. I literally get chills when I think about it because it made me put my life in a different perspective. And I had gotten divorced and, you know, got into a new relationship, and I was, you know, happy, but like I was missing something else. And so that
Mhm.
book kind of like shed some light on, you know, being bigger and setting goals and like just being more, and instead of just kind of stuck in your day to day. And I grew up that way. My family's like that. You know, we never went on vacation. My mom just everyone went to work, came home. It was very, you know, they just had their 8 to 5 job and that was it. And I feel like there's so much more to life than that. So
Mhm.
that was kind of like the one that kind of led me to wanting to be a life coach and in that world. And then the pandemic happened. That's a whole nother story. But during that time, I go back to my job where I'm meeting with clients, and I would say 90% of our clients were women. I'd go to lunch with them. They are clients of mine. And for some reason, there's something about me that people would just like tell me their whole life story. I mean, I could meet people like one time. In the first 20 minutes, they tell me everything. I hate my husband. I'm getting a divorce, like whatever it might be. And I was like, God. And I'm just hearing all these crazy stories and all these unique stories. And I'm like, there's got to be somewhere that people can tell these stories, because I'm sure other women are going through the same thing. Or you
Yeah.
hear someone, they're like, I lost my husband, you know, for whatever reason. And I know someone else that is going through that. So I'm like, how do we connect these people? Because I feel like you can get through it together if you're in the room or around someone who's been through it. And so that's kind of where the podcast came. I was like, I want a platform where I can have women on there to feel confident, to be comfortable to tell their stories. And that's where like Conversations with Twist came from.
I love it. And so on the podcast, I know a couple people have been on it and I've listened to it. But for those that want to dive in, it's really having these real life conversations and having the twist. To me, the word twist is like, and we're being real, right? And we're talking about that you may have sunshine and rainbows, but you might also have these like tears and hardness and whatnot. Is that your intention with the word twist, or what does twist mean to you?
That's exactly what it was. Yeah. And when I originally had started the podcast, I really wanted to, in my head, I wanted to be in person and sit next to this girl and have a glass of wine and have a real life conversation, because those were the conversations I was already having. And then the pandemic hit. So I went on Zoom, and I've been on Zoom now, and now it's just easier that way. But as I'm going, I'll have another season, but I think my fourth season, I want to get back to doing it. I want to do it in person because I want to have that connection. But yeah, the twist is, like, we all, at some point in our lives, we're all going to go through something hard, whether that's divorce, whether that's losing a child. I mean, some of my stories, I get chills just thinking about, because I just think about hearing them. Human trafficking, losing their sister to fentanyl overdose. I mean, you name the gamut, they're out there. Those stories are out there, and a lot of women just feel like they can't tell them because they're going to be shamed, or they're embarrassed, or whatever it might be. But I don't want people to feel that way. I want them to feel empowered to be like, this is my story, this is my journey, this is who I am, this is how like I got to this point. And helping other women to see that. And so that's kind of where that's where my passion lies with the podcast.
Yeah. I'm curious, when situations come up with either people on your podcast or in real life when these people are telling you all their stories, something I get a lot from our community is they can't share what they're going through because it's not only about them, right? Like they
Yeah.
can't say like, "Hey, this is what I'm navigating," because it's about their kid or it's about their husband or their family member or whatever. So it's not all their story to share. What advice would you give to a woman that needs support, needs to share her story or have someone hear it, but it's not, she can't? What do you do?
I say who cares, but that's just me. I personally struggle with that. I'm a pretty big open book. I mean, if you listen to all my solo episodes, I'm pretty honest. I am very sensitive about my ex-husband. I don't like to badmouth him. I have nothing really to badmouth him about, but I've never like really, really deep down told that story. I understand that. And I think there's ways to tell a story where you're not kind of throwing somebody under the bus, per se. But I've had women not come on because of the same reason. I've seen women go through divorce, and I'm like, God, please come on. And just like navigating um, blended family and all of those, because I mean, that is a situation that most women, I mean, that's a high percentage that we go through.
Yeah.
And so it's not an easy process, and it's different for everyone. And so just letting them be able to share what they want to share. But I've had women that are like, I don't feel comfortable. And then because, I mean, I have a stepdaughter, like I don't want to badmouth her mom, because
Yeah.
you don't want things to come back at you. So I think there's an elegant way of telling your story without throwing people under the bus or making them look bad. But I think my biggest thing is, you never know that there's someone out there listening that your story could impact them and change their lives. And there's been many times after I post an episode, someone will say, "Oh my gosh, that resonated with me and that really hit home. I just found out that I have cancer," or like whatever the situation might be. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And you're doing such a cool thing now where you're cultivating some in person right now, especially groups through like day events or your retreat coming up. And that kind of gives these women a safe place to do that, maybe for the first time, to really
Yeah.
have those more in depth relationships and connections. For someone that doesn't have that in their life, or they're craving more of it, other than coming to your retreat and your events, what are some ways that they could get started in finding those rooms that are safe places to open up?
Gosh, there's so many great ones. I mean, Hillary is a perfect example. I mean, she,
Yeah.
was one of the ones that wanted us to connect. Um, it's so interesting because I've born and raised in Sonoma County, so like I'm rooted here, and I literally know everyone. If you anyone who meets, like, they're like, "Oh, this is Heather," and she knows everyone, and then like 2 seconds later, someone walks in the room. Of course, I know them. So I forget that there's so many women that are here and they don't have people. They don't
Yeah.
have a support system. They don't have friends. I mean, I see on Facebook groups all the time, like, I'm looking for somewhere to, find women. And so for me, I want to be able to offer that. So I think long term, I would love to figure out how to have a group and have a space where people could do that. But there's so many great groups out there that are doing that. I mean, Hillary with She Can Club. There's so many mommy groups, and some I think a lot of people get scared and they're like, "Oh, I don't know how to put myself out there." But oh my God, if you can just get in the room and meet one or two people, it's powerful, and then it just starts growing. And if you're open to it and telling people what you need or where you need support, I mean, our community is so great that they'll be like, have you met this person? Have you met this person?
Yeah.
Have you met this person? Which is why my company is called the Connection Hive, because I really believe in connections. And I really believe that there's, we all need something. And like, how do I connect everyone to those people? So I would say look at like Facebook groups, look at
Yeah.
women's retreats, put yourself out there. There's so many great little things. I know there's like event pages where you can find those things, but I would encourage, if you're in that little rut, go be in those rooms. You can even email me or text me and I will tell you where to go to because I don't want people to feel alone, and I want people to feel like they have friends and support.
Yeah, I love that. And I do, I know we have some moms in our community that live in really rural areas,
Mhm.
right? And they're like, I have to drive an hour to even get to a community or get to these different places. And so I think that that can make it harder. I think that online connection is so powerful. And
Mhm.
that has been a huge part of my story because, yeah, if you have a baby asleep on top of you, or you have to drive an hour, or you have these different variables, you're a full time working mom. I remember when I first had my first son, and all the mommy meetups and all the events I wanted to go to were like 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. And I was like, I have a job and a
Yeah.
child. Like, there's no way I can get there. And so I think that it's finding what does work for you, to your
Yeah.
point, like looking at Eventbrite, putting things up on Facebook groups, finding local events. But I also do love the concept of retreats. And honestly, before I had been in this space, I hadn't really heard of retreats. What was your introduction into retreats? Because I think it's a really good way for you to get out of your environment and get
Mhm.
into a safe space where you can go and kind of be this other version of yourself or the full version of yourself. And it doesn't have to be local to you. What was your introduction? And talk a little bit about what your retreat specifically will look like and how someone knows if it's for them or not.
Okay, first, I've never been to a retreat.
Okay, but this is a
but
really
but
important. No, this is such an important point though, because exactly what we're talking
yeah.
about. If the women don't have what they want where they are, they should create it, right?
Yep. Yep.
Sometimes you have to go first. And that is so important. Like, you don't have to have gone to a retreat. You don't have to have gone to a community to start one.
Yep.
Like, I actually think that's a huge point there, because you don't have to have gone. You're just going
Yeah.
to start
Yeah.
it and
I'm
go.
just gonna start it.
So what made you decide to do that and have the confidence to do that?
I will have to say I've been to conferences, which is kind of the same thing. I actually went to one of Rachel Hollis's conferences back when she was doing them, and me and my best friend went. And again, being in a room with like-minded women who want the same thing is so freaking powerful. Like, it is. Oh, it was life changing for me to go there. And that was actually, and I know we're going to talk about surrogacy, but I was pregnant with my surrogate when I went to that conference. And I just met so many great women who are still my friends. Like, I still am connected with them. So I think, and there's so many different types of retreats. There's yoga retreats or health and wellness. People are going to Bali and Mexico, and there's local ones and mommy ones. And there's so many of these little groups that are kind of happening. Find what you like and what you're passionate about. If you're a yoga person, go to a yoga retreat. If because what happens is the conferences are different, because this was like thousands and thousands of people, and
Yeah.
we only met the people who were next to us or sitting at our table or whatnot. But when you get in a room of a retreat where it's small and it's like 10 to 15, 20 people, you really build bonds, and you're in this space to like figure yourself out and talk through things,
Yeah.
and have a space to say what's wrong and what you need help with. And that it's so powerful, and all these women are just they leech onto it. And so I was going to say too, if you're looking for like a group or something, like do something that you're passionate about. Like, do you like to sew? Do you like whatever your hobby is or something that you like to
Yeah.
do? Like, go do those things, because then you're going to be with the people who are, like-minded. And then you can connect with them that way. So yeah, with this retreat, I again wanted to do just that. I wanted to be able to have a space where women could just come. I meet like my day-to-day friends that I'm at, like not work friends, but like actual best friends, We're
Yeah.
all struggling. We're all struggling with being a mom, being able to do it all, setting goals, going back to work after being a stay-at-home mom. And so I want to have a space where women can set goals and set intentions and really dive into like what's like holding them back, and just come out of that retreat being like, yes, let's do it. Like, let's kill this world. Like, we only live once. We're going to do it. And so it's going to be a little bit of obviously like education, and it's all about building confidence, and we'll have like yoga and walking and meditation, but also like wine and food. And so it's gonna be super fun. So I'll give you the link if you want to share, but
Yeah.
it'll be in April, and it's gonna be fun. I can't wait.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. I wish I could be there. I will be like 2 weeks postpartum, but there,
Well, the
but
plan is to have another one. So this is like one, and I would love to do another one like later in the year if all goes well.
hopefully I can make that one. I want to talk a little bit about investing in yourself because retreats cost money because they cost money to put on too,
Yeah.
right? So the person that's hosting them has to pay for things, so they have to charge for it. And I think that this is really hard for people in general, but especially women, especially mothers, because potentially you already have more expenses than you can navigate in your life. You're trying to figure out where to put things, but we have to prioritize our own emotional, physical, mental well-being. And retreats, conferences, they are an example of one way to do that, and they are really powerful. And you're saying whether it's this big event that you went to, the conference for Rachel Hollis or anyone else, or it's this intimate retreat, similar experiences in the sense that they bring something out of you, but different experiences, like you were saying, in the depth of relationships. And the retreats I've been to, I agree, the relationships that come out of that, those are friends that are just like lifelong friends now that I really, you wouldn't have that otherwise.
Mhm.
But you have to make an investment in yourself to be able to do that. How did you get the courage to do that the very first time when you went to that conference? And what would you maybe tell a mom that is, let alone struggling with getting her nails done, to maybe go and make a different purchase?
I think the biggest the purchasing is hard. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I mean, that was something that I have struggled with for a while. Like, I can't afford it. Like, I was going to go to Bali, and I'm like, oh, I can't really afford it, but I just
Yeah.
afforded to put a down payment on for a retreat. So I think that you have what you put in is what you're going to get, and I think we find a lot of times that we're like, oh, it's too expensive, and we can't do this, and we can't do that. But like, if you don't make that investment, how are you ever going to know? And how are you ever going to move forward with your
Mm,
goals or your life or your business if you don't invest in that? And so sometimes you just kind of have to take a hit. Don't go to Starbucks. Maybe don't buy something. Don't get your hair done for 6 months, whatever it might be. Like, I think we can make sacrifices there. But I don't think it's always money. I think from what I understand, a lot of people are like, oh, well, I have kids, and that means like my husband's going to have to do this, and he's going to have to take time off to take the kids to school. And there's always those excuses, but like, you've got to fill your cup. You've got to
yeah.
fill your soul. And so sometimes you just have to convince them. Like, my husband's so supportive of everything that I do. Thank God. But you just have to like just do it, and like rely on your family and your friends and your mommy friends to take the kids to school and to help out, to like give yourself some time. And I don't know anyone who's never done that and was like, that was a waste of money. Like, everyone is always
Yeah.
so juiced and empowered, and you meet great people. And so sometimes you just have to take the leap and just do it, what
Yeah.
Nike said.
Yeah. And maybe your ex-husband wasn't not supportive, but there was something there that you didn't have the perfect relationship to continue forward with. If someone's like, well, good for you, my husband wouldn't get it, or good for you, like my husband isn't supportive, what would you tell that person?
Well, my instinct is to say leave him, but that's just because of the comment you just
Hey,
said
we're
about
not
my
going
ex.
to do that
I'm not
today,
saying that.
but if we want to try something else first.
I think you also have to, like, it's almost like you have to convince them too, like whatever they're doing. Like, I'm sure
Yeah.
that they're investing money in something like a sport or a hobby or the house or their car or their truck or whatever it might be. So if you have that pull to be like, well, you spend this amount of money, or you get to go on your, your boys retreat or boys weekend, like, I should be able to get that too. And I think that a husband should allow their wives to do that, or spouses or whatever, to do that, because your wife is gonna come back in a way better mood. She's gonna be empowered. Um, but it's interesting because I've heard the opposite, where men are scared that their women, this person's going to come back and they're going to be like this big thing, and they're not going to know what to do. And
Yeah.
I think you just have to follow your gut and like have the conversation. And I feel like you're in a relationship for a reason, and they should be supportive of what you want to do and what your goals are. So just being
Yeah.
open and honest. Don't leave them. I mean, unless it's really bad. But
Yeah.
I
Try to
think
work
just
through it
having
at
that
first. But
conversation, you know?
I think communication, what you're saying, and then the other points that I think you made that are really important is explaining kind of why it's important to you,
Yeah.
why you want to go and do it, and what's in it for the team or the
Yep.
family,
Yep.
right? Like what is the, baseline of that and why you want to do it. And explaining also, yeah, this is when you say men do have a fear of, is this person going to go out and want something different? Is
Yeah.
this person going to go want something that I can't provide? And so I think it's helping understand, like, you're not looking for a new life. Like, you're
Yeah.
looking to maybe find something in you. You're working on yourself. You're looking for fulfillment and joy and happiness in a specific way, and showing the results on the other side, right? When your partner that loves you sees you lit up, they see you excited, they see you pursuing that sewing Facebook group, like it could literally be anything. They're going to be like, you go, honey, go on those comments about that crocheting. I love it. Like they're going to be so excited for you and whatever it is. So I think that is really important. Now, your retreat specifically is focusing a lot on confidence, and that's something that you teach directly and indirectly through the different ways that you support business owners and women. And I want you to talk a little bit, why is confidence important? Like, why do we need to be confident?
We were talking before this, and I was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to answer that. But I think it's just about the confidence in believing what you want. Because I think we get so in our own head sometimes about life and our goals and those kinds of things. But I think if you can be confident about your decisions and confident about where you want to take your life, I think it just drives everything else. And one thing that you said earlier was about building confidence within your children. And so I have
Yeah.
children. I have 2 girls, 2 boys. And when I look back at my childhood, if my mom was who I am, like, dang, would I be so much different? Back then, like,
Yeah.
it took me being 35 to like really be like, wow, there's so much more out there. And so I think it's just about building confidence and like owning the life you want, setting the goals that you want. It's not necessarily about like, oh, I feel good in my skin and I'm beautiful. And I think so many times that that's what we think confidence is like, oh, I look good. And I think it's just accepting who you are and accepting,
Mm.
I mean, you can't change who you are, but you should love who you are and embrace who you are, and just being okay with dreaming big. I keep looking over here because my vision board's over there, so it always gets me all inspired. But
Oh,
I think it's so important to just build confidence. I mean, my husband sees it. He's like, you've inspired me to be more confident and to like be confident in the goals and in the direction that I want to bring my life. And I think it's also important to instill that with your children too.
yeah. Something you said though is we can't change who we are, but we can, right? We can change parts of it, and what we do with who we are maybe is another way to look at it. And I'm thinking, just as you're saying, you're looking at your vision board, like the point of a vision board is to create your reality, right? To
Mm-hmm.
create what you want, what you vision. So no, you're not changing who you are at the core. You're not changing like everything about yourself, but you are giving yourself a map or a direction in which you want to take the version of you are to the next level. Now, I think that sometimes when you haven't seen those things modeled for you, you were even talking about your mom. If your mom had been different, you would have been different, right? It can be hard to like think these things up out of nowhere, but you get almost this like integral feeling inside of you where you're like, gosh, I just feel that there should be something different. I don't know if it's a retreat. I don't know if it's a Facebook group or what it should be. How did that start for you? And what are some of the first steps you take when you just know you want different? And maybe you're not sitting there waking up every day like hating yourself. So you're not like, oh, I have horrible confidence, but you're just like, some I could be better, right? I
Yeah.
could have more of this.
I think I mean, it does stem, I think, a lot to health. I never really worked out. I didn't really take care of myself as much as I should. I like drank all the time and, partied, and I just didn't care. And I think once I started taking time for myself and investing in myself and my health and working out again, I'm like, it is crazy how to like change your mindset, I think. And so I think that was kind of like the beginning of it. And that, again, getting in the room with people, reading those books that are inspiring, watching the people who are kind of where you might see yourself, or kind of doing the things that you are like, oh, this could be kind of cool, because it just builds this like confidence, like I can do this too. And I think it was actually the turning point was when I left my ex-husband. I felt this whole new, I think I was just stuck. And so then I got out of that and I'm like, yes, like let's do this. And again, just being around those people and seeing people do this, they do the things that you want to do, that they did it and you can do it too. And so that
Yeah.
just builds confidence. And then, I'm a big dreamer, and people, I've done pleasure parties. I was a party light consultant. I've dibble dabbled and everything. I'm like, I'm going to start a jewelry. Like, I've tried all these things, and then you keep trying and trying and trying, and then you're like, okay, this wasn't for me, until you find that one thing that's for you. And I think this environment that I'm in now with like my podcast and my business, like I have found who I am. But it took some years to get there. It took going through relationships and jobs and like really navigating that. But I always knew that there was more. And it's like you just have to like keep putting your next foot forward until you get to that point where you're like, yes, this is the money spot right here.
Oh, so good. Don't give up. Like, just keep
Don't give
going.
up. Just keep going.
Keep moving through it. Now, you have been in a blended family for how many years?
8 years.
8 years. And so I'm going to say you found your groove, but I don't know if that's like the case. But there's definitely like this beginning journey, I can assume, of like, okay, this is new for everyone. We're navigating it. Now we've been in this for a little bit. For someone that is in the season at the beginning, or they're not even there yet, but they want to be, they hope to have a blended family one day. And they're like, how would I do that? How would I get started? Can you pour some belief into that person? And then can you give us like 1 to 2 tangible things that someone could do to connect with their blended family, to say like, okay, this is how we're going to like create a culture of one family in our home? And I think that this could apply to even a non-blended family, like just some things that you guys do as a family of a whole to like cultivate confidence, love,
Mhm.
connection in your household. What are some things that work well? But for the person that can't even see themselves there yet, pour some belief into them first.
I'm not gonna tell you that road is easy, because it's not. It's definitely a bumpy road. But when you find that person that just like lights you up and makes you feel the person who you are, then you're like, okay, here it is. Like, here's the money spot, right? But oh, blended families. That's like so unpacking so many things. I think when I left my ex, I think the biggest challenge most women are going to face is, I don't want to ruin my kids. Like that's like number one, right? I
Uh-huh.
mean, myself, like what am I going to do to my kids? How is this going to affect my kids? Um, Again, it's not an easy road, but I believe that you want your kids to see you happy. And if you're in a relationship where you're not, then you're only like fueling that for them, and that's not fair for them. And you
Mhm.
think back and you hear so many people like, oh, I am the way I am now because of all this trauma that had happened back in my childhood. And I'm like, shoot, I don't want to mess them up either. And so I think if you can just like lean into that and know that it's going to be okay. And again, it's a bumpy road. But I always tell them, like, you have more love. You have now another sibling that loves you. And now, you have a little brother that you guys absolutely adore. And you have a second room, and you get to do whatever you want. You get to have 2 Christmases and 2 birthdays. But I know that it's not easy for everyone. I definitely, communication's big. And I think if you can keep a strong relationship with that ex, um, that is probably the most important thing. I get that all the time. My kids' teachers are always like, God, you guys do divorce so well. You guys can your blended families, like you guys do, you make it look so easy. And it took a minute to get there, but we do it for the kids. You know, we have to
Mm,
stay civil for the kids. We can go to a soccer game together and be in the same room together because it's for the kids. And at the end of the day, like you just didn't get, you just, that wasn't your person, you know?
yeah.
And I think that's okay. And just being open to the opportunity of growing your family and meeting new, you know, having more kids and meeting their kids. And I don't know, it's just, it's a fun world. But I would say things that we do, definitely my family likes to go like Disneyland and Universal Studios. And whenever we go on vacation is when we really connect, because it's not, we're just kind of able to like focus on each other versus at home in your everyday life. um, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I think that's so good. I think there is so much beauty to it. It does make me think, though, for the woman that you were talking about at the beginning, that's sitting in the relationship feeling unhappy, and you're saying your kids, deserve to see you happy, that you deserve to feel happy. How do you know when you need to do some work first, or you need to not be in that relationship? Like, how do you know, hey, I need to work on me first? I need to find joy and fulfillment. Because there's also this saying, like, wherever you go, there you'll be type of
Hmm.
thing,
Hmm.
right? And so if you're being treated poorly, we know that, right? That's a fact. That's a different situation. If that's maybe not the case, if you're just like, I don't know if this is the right person for me forever. I don't feel like I'm my best version of myself. I don't feel like we're the best versions of who we are. When do you know, this is, I don't think there is a right answer, but I'm more curious, like your opinion. How do you know when you need to build up like that self confidence first in yourself and like focus on you, or you need to switch things up?
I think when you start doing the work is when you know. Like I started doing the work. I started reading and I started really like diving into my life and my goals and like what I wanted to do. And then it became very clear. I also think that there's nothing wrong with getting counselors or
Yeah.
marriage counseling, because sometimes we get so stuck in our day to day stuff that having someone from the outside speaking into that dynamic, there's something about it that kind of changes the vibe. I recommend that, or even doing it on your own for some self discovery. I mean, there's so many coaches out there now, life coaches and empowerment coaches, and I think it's worth the investment to have one of those to kind of help you work through some of that. But you should know in your gut, like if you're deep down inside and you're like, this isn't what I like. And I constantly say this, you only live once. I believe that.
Mm,
And you got to make the best of it. And then you don't want to you don't want to live a life where you're miserable and you don't want to get up and you don't even want to like have dinner with your husband. Like when you get to that point, you're going to be like, I've got to go. And then just being like, getting a support system around you, whether that's friends or someone else who's been in that or group counseling or whatnot. I think getting some perspectives from other people to kind of help you see that light is super important. But I just knew deep down inside that I was like,
yeah.
this isn't right. And I felt very stuck and not happy. And it took me a minute to figure that out. And had I not made that leap, I would not be where I am today. I have no idea what I'd be doing today. But sometimes you just got to take that leap of faith and just know like your gut is telling you something and just follow that.
Yeah. But and I think that is really important, like that intuition and listening to your gut. But the thing I want to echo that you said is like do the work first and then
Yeah.
it'll become clear, right?
Because
Because
you
you
can
need,
even do the work and you might figure it out. Like go to a marriage
yeah,
counselor, read books. I mean, I'm reading a marriage book right now because like I know that there's things that we can work on. Like you got to try that first before you just give up.
yeah. And you want to work on yourself no matter what. Whether it's in that relationship or not, like you're important. So you
Yeah.
need to do that for yourself. I think that's really, really key. Now, what are some ways that you involve your husband now in what you're doing? Because you said earlier like you're spread thin, you have a lot of moving parts going on, and something that I see for people in our community is they really get excited about what they're doing and they want their partner to be a part of all of it, but there's our partner also can't be a part of everything that we're doing, right? And my husband and I run multiple businesses, and I'm definitely probably guilty of this on the other end where I'm like we're doing so much together. But I'm curious, like, how do you keep the balance of the excitement of of like, hey babe, here's what I'm doing and I want you to know like this piece of it. But like he's obviously not sitting and having this whole conversation with us and every part of it. Where's the sharing? Where's the like spark notes? How do you like get excited with each other but not involve in everything?
Oh man, that's a tough balance. That's a tough question. I'm not gonna lie. Um, Um, I think number one is sharing your goals. Again, I have my vision board. It's literally in our room. We see it every single day. And I think making them aware of what those goals are, is always super
Yeah.
important. And sometimes like you don't want to come home and talk about work, but you just want to vent. Like I have a client, I was just like "Bleh," today, and he's like, "I'm sorry, Mom. I just want you to listen. That's it. So I just want you to listen." But we have a company together, and so that's been exciting to kind of get his perspective on it and involving him more and working alongside of how that works. Um, man, I'm still trying to figure it out, to be honest.
And I
There's
think
some days
that
where I'm just like running like ragged, and then I come home and I'm like, oh my god, and he's like, how was your day? And I'm like, good.
I
But
think that's an
he,
important balance though. You have like the good, the one answer, and then you have the other side where you're like everything's in it. And I think just remembering that we're all trying to navigate it. But I think the takeaway for me in what you said was communicating your goals, right?
yeah, yep,
Because even if we have the days where we just have the one worded answer or we have the word vomit of everything that's going on, if you and your team member, your partner, your life partner, can be on the same team with the goals, if you can come back to this is our vision, this is our goal, then regardless of what the day to day life looks like in the meantime, then the overall concept is connected. You're moving towards the same target. And I think that that really is a good takeaway because it's like, okay, if I'm coming home and I have one worded answers for 2 months and one of our goals was communication and sharing the journey together and vision or whatever, then he may be like, Heather, what the heck? This is on
yeah,
our vision board. This is what we're supposed to be doing. You're
yeah,
not talking to me about anything. And now on the other side of it, if it's like you guys have a business together and if you come home and every day you're talking about the business, everything is so in depth, you're never getting a break from that. And one of the goals is work life balance or something
mhm,
like that. Then you can step in and be like, hey, this isn't really in alignment with what we talked about. So I think for me, that is a big takeaway. It's like, what are the goals? Communicate the goals and like come back to them.
yeah. I also think that oh, I had a thought and then it just went away. Well, one thing I was going to say too is having a date night.
Oh, yeah.
Like that is what I'm trying to prioritize is like making time for us, like whether that's once a month we go to dinner and just to be able to connect and kind of like digress and just be like, oh, that was a lot. Um, but oh God, I had a good thought and I lost it. It'll come back to me. But I think I definitely think at the end of the day, like communication's key. And what I was gonna say is I was like Monday through Friday, I'm gonna hustle hard. And right now he just had back surgery, so he's home. And I'm like, you're gonna have to kind of pick up on like the home stuff because I'm hustling hard because mama wants to make money. I want to make like a good life for us. And that's like where I'm at right now. And he is so supportive in that. And so I think again, going back to the goals and knowing that like not every time, not every year you're going to be on the same page. Like
Yeah.
one might be like hustling really hard and the other one's like on neutral and it's different times in their life. And I think just being able to communicate through that is also very important too.
Yeah. What season are we in? And like, what's
Yeah.
our role in this
Yeah.
season? I think that's super important. Now, all the things that we've talked about, kind of doing life your way, having goals, having confidence, it kind of brings me to this last topic that I really want to break down, which I'm just super curious about, which is your surrogacy journey. And I want to know, how did you get started? Like, how did this thought first enter your mind where you're like, I think I want to be a surrogate. Like I want to go find out and because I've heard from people that have done this, there's really two approaches. There's it pops up into your brain is the first thing. And then occasionally someone asks you to be one. I've heard that from a
Yeah.
couple people too. They know someone in their life, someone comes to them and asks them to take that on. I know that's not your journey, so we won't talk about that today. But the other part of it, like where did this first thought bubble up?
With my ex-husband, actually. So I had my two children and I loved being pregnant. Like, talk about confidence. Like, when I am pregnant, I am a whole nother like being. It's crazy. And so I had two really good births, two really good pregnancies, and it was I had a coworker who had done it, and then I was like, that's kind of cool. And I was always very intrigued. Like anytime I interacted with her, I was very intrigued by like what she was doing, and so I kind of like started asking her questions. And then one day I was like, do, like Google, like right, and I said to my ex-husband, I'm like, I want to be a surrogate. And he was like, absolutely not. And he just like shot that down. And it never went away. Like it always kind of stuck with me. And I was like, well, we're together. He's not supportive of it because your husband has to be on board with it.
Yeah.
And so he was like, nope. And so whatever, I kind of like let it go away. And then when we split and now with my current husband, and I was like, I want to be a surrogate. And he was like, what? He didn't like, he knew of it, but he was like, what? You're crazy. And he's, Latino and Catholic, grew up Catholic. And so he was like, no. I was like, just let me like, listen to me. Like, let's watch some videos, hear me out. And so I did. And he was like, if this is something that you want to do, like this is a perfect example. Like this is something you want to do, I support you. He said, but the only thing is if you do this journey, I want one of my own because at the time we didn't have one together. And so I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I could be pregnant two more times, sure. And so I hate to say this because it is people probably I might like everyone does it for different reasons. Of course I did it to give to somebody else. I mean, that's obviously like 100% number one. I knew I could do it. I love being pregnant. I know there's so many women out there like struggling with it, but also like the financial part of it, like it's a huge wear and tear on your body, mentally, with your family, like all of the things. And so I was kind of like, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to make sure like I get the most investment out of it. And so I literally
Yeah.
was like, highest paying surrogacy agency. And so I had a call with them, and they were great. They're down in Southern California. Just fell in love with them. I got to meet the owner and just loved what they were doing and how they match families. And went on the journey. I mean, starting it, it's crazy. You go through, I don't know, like 100-page survey. They want to know everything. They want to know how your birth went, how your life is, like, what do you do for a job? What are your goals? Like, they want to know everything.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I got matched. I originally was matched with two men. They lived in, I want to say, somewhere in Europe. I can't even remember. Like, when did the contract, when did the transfer, did all that. The transfer didn't take. They didn't have any embryos, so they decided to like not pursue continuing. And so I was super bummed about that. It's like it's just like a miscarriage, right? You're like, oh, what did I do wrong? And so they were very sweet. I actually still like stay in contact with them. And then I got matched to this amazing woman in Florida. She was a single mom, never had kids, never had a husband, couldn't have babies, and she was like, I want a child." And so we instantly connected, and she accepted me like right on the call, and it was like one of the best things I ever did.
This is so cool. Okay, couple questions.
Yeah.
So breaking it down, I want to know the original why. Like when you went to your ex-husband originally and you're like, "Hey, I want to do this." Was it primarily financially like driven, or was it, because no judgment on my part if you're listening and you're judging, I'm sorry. But I'm just seriously curious, like was it like, hey, this is really cool, like I enjoy being pregnant and I could make money off of it,
Yeah.
or was it more of this like spiritual guide
I'm not
to
a
pull you to
spiritual
do it?
person, so it was definitely more like I can do this. This is a way to get income for my family, and I loved being pregnant, but then also giving a family, something. And
Yeah,
then when you're connected to that person, like all those whys kind of go out, and you're like, I'm doing this for them.
for you, I
And
have to do this.
once
Yeah.
you like give birth and you see that baby go in her arms, I mean, there's no words that describe it. It makes everything worth it, and you're almost like, okay, I could have done that for free. But it is a lot of wear and tear on your body, and
Yeah, for
a lot
sure.
of emotional like struggle. I mean, I think I did okay. I felt like I did okay, but it's not as easy as most people think, which is why you have to go like through a psychological screening and things like that, because there could be somebody that's like, I'm not giving this baby back.
Yeah,
um
I feel like it would be really hard actually.
yeah.
And so in these situations, I'm like super technical, maybe I'm sound super naive and ignorant, but are these, with each of these situations, this woman couldn't have eggs and your other potential partner was two men. So are these your eggs, or do
No,
they have other eggs that are coming in? Okay.
they had other eggs. Yeah. So the my intended mother is what they're called. The IMs, intended mother or intended parent or dad. It just depends. Father, IF, I think. She had to get an egg donor, she had to get a sperm donor, and then had to go through a surrogacy. So, I mean, it was
Okay.
very pricey for her to do all of that. But no, not my eggs, and I wouldn't have done it. That's like one thing where I'm like, because I would know like my DNA is out there, and so
Yeah.
for me that was like a no for me.
Okay.
But
So interesting.
yeah,
Okay. And I do think that emotionally, physically, there's definitely like all these different aspects to it. And so obviously doing this like personal work that you've done supports you so much in that. But for someone that's interested in this, or maybe something that they can see themselves in that's different, how do you outside of what they tell you to do and they support you to do, what recommendations would you give to mentally, physically prepare to do something like that?
I've had a lot of women reach out to me who are interested in it. I've women reach out to be a surrogate, and I've also had women reach out to maybe get a surrogate. So definitely, I would say like talk to somebody who's kind of been through it. Agencies are great. They do consultation calls for free. I mean, like, you know what I mean. Like you can go and at least
Yeah.
like talk to them about it. Um, Again, like knowing your why is super important. And for me, I never bonded with my kids right away. Like when after I gave birth, uh, it took a minute for me. And so I knew
Mm-hmm.
that like once the baby was out, like it wasn't like, oh, that's
Yeah.
mine or whatever. Like it was easy for me. And then the whole process is you see it through. You know this is not your baby. And so that is helpful. Um I think it's a thing that's not very much talked about, and I get really freaking mad about these Netflix series that are talking about surrogates, and they're like, "Oh, the husband ends up cheating on the mom with the surrogate." Like, it doesn't work that way. And you are giving surrogacy such a bad rap. Like that, there's been two, and I'm like, come on.
Wow.
It's so yeah. And then I think really understanding like what relationship you want before and after is very important, which is why going through an agency is very important, because they match you and they you talk through all those questions and they match you with somebody who wants the same thing, because you
Yeah.
have to be crystal clear, like, do you want a relationship with this child after, do you not, like having all those conversations up front. You have a lot of those, and they really help guide you through all of that. And they kind of like a social worker who's kind of like your middle person. And I love Michelle. She was like amazing. But she was that like person in between us to kind of help us
Yeah.
guide us through, certain things that would come up.
And so your surrogacy was pretty recent, and you still have like a friendship with the mom. But what
Mhm.
does the relationship look like going forward?
Yeah, so she's almost 4. She was born March of 2020, literally a week before the pandemic, before the world got shut down. Gave that birth to that baby, and I don't know how they got back to Florida. It was a miracle that they did. Um, but we probably talk. We don't talk on the phone, but she'll text me. I'd say every other week.
Oh,
She'll send
wow.
me photos. She always asks about my kids. She always wants pictures. She met my husband obviously like during the transfer, and my husband was there during the birth. So she had a relationship with my husband, and then after I had the baby, they were in a hotel, and I brought my 2 up there with me to go see the baby before they left. And so she got to meet my 2 olders, and that was such a special moment. So she like truly cares about us,
Yeah.
and I would love to meet her someday. That little girl. They live in Florida, so she's always like, "Come
Yeah.
visit," or "When?" So I think we'll meet someday. But she's very open with her about who I am. I forget what she calls me. She calls me something, Mama. But I would love to have a relationship with her. I think it's like every time I see a photo, I'm like, God, I gave birth to her. You know what I mean? It's so wild, but it was
Yeah.
a very cool and special thing for me.
Very, very cool. If you were, other than knowing your why and some of the advice you gave, what would you just like tell someone that has that on their heart or their interest, as like kind of final thoughts?
I think you should do it. I mean, at least do the research and talk to someone else. It is probably the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life, and I would do it again. There's possibilities of me doing it again, actually. Um, but I wish I was 30. I would do it over and over again. I read a book. This lady did it like 8 times. I mean, I probably wouldn't do it
Wow.
that many times, but I will never forget it. I'm a huge supporter in it. I think that there's so many women every day. Like I have friends, very close friends, who have been trying to get pregnant, and I'm like, God, I wish I could give them a baby, you know. And
Yeah.
so, n- doing it for those reasons, I think I wish that surrogacy had a better, like, what's the word that I'm looking for?
Repu- rep, uh,
Like,
reputation
reputation.
or
Yeah,
something.
because
But
more people would do it.
clicking the wrong buttons here. It's interesting that you say that because being on the outside of it, I actually wasn't aware that it had a bad reputation. Like the people that I know that talk about it, to your point, speak really highly of it. I don't think it's something that I physically could actually even do, let alone like mentally. But I think that if you can, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're the person that that you can, and that's part of your journey or could be, or you want it to be, it's such a cool opportunity, like you said, and you can give something to someone that we all here on this podcast know how valuable that is, right? And
Yep.
I think that that is so cool. I absolutely love that. Before we jump into our last final questions, I'd love for you to just tell everyone where they can continue to stay a part of your world. They can listen to your podcast and connect with you on social media. What are the best places for them to find you?
So my podcast is called Life Conversations with a Twist. You can find it on Spotify. I just heard Google's not doing podcasts anymore. I don't know. I just got an email
Oh,
about it. It was weird. But anyways, Apple, obviously, any of the major platforms. And my new business is called The Connection Hive. My website's called theconnectionhive.co because com was not available. And then you can follow me on Instagram. I'm definitely active. I'm more active on my personal, which is heathernelson.life. That was like my life coaching handle, and that's where I mostly post stuff. But then also you can find me on the Connection Hive. It's
awesome.
the.connection.hive, and you can call me, you can text me, you can email me, all the things. I'm open to having conversations with anybody about anything, and so happy to be a support and resource for anybody out there.
Amazing. Now you've done a lot of things. You have a lot of moving parts coming into this year, your retreat, all of the fun things that you're working on. What is a goal that is currently on your heart, something you're really excited about and pursuing?
Being a millionaire.
Love it. So I want to, we need to wrap up here because it's time. We're all busy moms, but I want to challenge you on that just a little bit because I love when people have like a financial goal like that. And there's a couple different ways I like to break it down. Like one, there's millionaire revenue, and then there's like net worth and what's in your bank account, right? There's so many different ways to think about it. And there's also just like the why behind it. Like, is it to say that you're a millionaire? Is it
No.
to say like all these? I know it's not for you,
Yeah.
but for anyone else that's listening, it's like I always challenge people with this because on paper I was a millionaire at 28, but that means nothing, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I always come back and I tell people, I'm like, and what does that mean to you? Like, because there's so many different ways that people can explain that. And I think if you're not there and you hear that about someone else, you're like, ooh, I aspire for that. And it's like, well, do you know what's in their bank account? Do you know how they reached that revenue number? Do you know what their expenses are, their overhead, all these different things? So I'm curious, I know that's not what it means for you. So what does it mean for you? What does the identity of a millionaire woman mean to you, and what is the goal of this year?
I just think it's funny because everyone's like, oh, I want six figures. I want six figures. I've been at six figures for a very long time. And so I'm like, okay, well, now what's like my next goal, right? Of like getting to
Yeah.
that. So I'm like, a million just sounds great. I was listening to a podcast and like, shoot for a million. I'm like, okay, great. For me, that's obviously like total income at this point.
Yeah.
But I just want to I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to go on vacation. I want to be able to buy something if I want and not be like, oh, it's not about like the status or having a huge house on a hill somewhere. It's definitely not that. It's more about giving back, giving my family the life that they want and they strive for. But I definitely would love to grow my podcast. I love what I do. I love the women that are on it. And so, sharing that. And then obviously figuring out my business and how I can help other businesses grow. I think at the end of the day,
Yeah.
that's very important to me. And yeah, I want to have a cabin. Like I just want those things that are like,
Experiences and life and
yes,
fun.
yes,
I think it comes back to freedom. Like
yeah,
I feel for almost everyone, and especially what I'm hearing you say, it's the freedom of the money to spend where you want when you want it, the freedom of time to do the things that you want to do. And sometimes money can help provide freedom, right? But there's so many more things that come to it, the freedom of fulfillment, the joy, like how you're spending that time. And I think is our final question. That's what I'd love for you to speak to, is for coming back to, again, finances allow us to create a different version of freedom. So we definitely want more money in the hands of ambitious moms and women to be able to impact themselves and their families. And we try to help teach different ways to do that here. But the fulfillment piece of it, the confidence, the joy, the all of the other things that we talked about, if you could help someone get on the right path to fulfill that freedom within them and unlock this ability to be free, to dream of being a millionaire, to dream of creating this life for yourself, what's one thing that they could do today to get on
so
that path?
honestly, think big. Like think big out of, okay, this year I want to work out, or I want to read more. No, like think big. Like big. Like I want to take my family on vacation to Italy for a year or a week, or I want to travel the world, or like what are those goals that you're like, "Oh god, that would be so cool to do." I want to roller, like the things that are so big, and like those big goals that you think you're never going to reach, like at least even thinking about it. And then like even thinking about some like ones that are more attainable, but even just setting goals. There's so many women they don't even know. They're just in their day to day. I'm just gonna get up, I'm gonna cook dinner, I'm gonna do laundry, and I'm gonna go to work, and I'm gonna come home, and I'm gonna watch Netflix, and that's it. Like, and they're okay with it, and I guess that's fine. But I challenge them to set those goals, to think big, to because then you get like, yeah, I can do this, and then it just kind of fuels that soul to kind of keep going.
Yeah. And again, if you're happy, then don't do that, right? If you're craving this freedom, if you're craving this goal, if you're craving this result, then it's doing that and thinking big. Heather, thank you so much. You're such a wealth of inspiration and knowledge, and I just love how you pour into the women in your community and support people in all these different aspects. I love your journey, your story. This was such a good conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thanks for having me.